Y'all, today we are going to start talking about graphing equations, but we are going to call them functions now. And these functions are going to be quadratic, and all that means is that instead of something like this, we are going to have something like this. This f of x means it's a function. It's kind of a fancy way of writing y. And then our uh, x value is going to have a number 2 exponent, so that makes it quadratic. So let's take a look at some of these. And it's going to be important that you have Desmos out so that you can graph these on Desmos. So I'm going to put this function into Desmos. Again, it's a function because we call it a function because of this notation. This is read f of x, a function of x. It's a fancy way to write y, but now we only have one variable x. So we could type this into the calculator exactly the way we see it. So you should do that now. So here I've put this function into the calculator, and you can see it makes this sort of a U shape. We call this a parabola. It is a quadratic function. The graph we call a parabola. When we graph lines, we just call them straight lines. We call this thing a parabola. And we're going to talk about some important features of this parabola. Its vertex, the x-intercepts, and the y-intercept. There can be multiple x-intercepts, there can be one, there can be none, and we will only ever have one y-intercept and one vertex. So let's take a look. An x-intercept is a place where this function will cross the x-axis. Remember, the x-axis is the horizontal left-right axis, and so you can see this one will never cross the x-axis, and so therefore when we are writing our x-intercept, which I will shorten to x-int, we can just say none. And all of these things that we're looking at, all these characteristics, important parts of this parabola or this quadratic function, they're all points, which means they're all going to have an x, y. And so all of our answers, if they exist, should be coordinates and have an x, y. So we don't have an x-intercept for this function, so let's look for a y-intercept. We might have to move our graph a bit, and we can click. If we click the graph, it will highlight our y-intercept, our x-intercept, and actually our vertex. Well, not the vertex, I'm sorry. So we click this, and you can see where it's crossing the y-axis. That is the y-intercept. If you click that point, it shows you the coordinates. We can simply copy them down, 0, 20. So right now we know our parabola, our quadratic function, does not cross the x-axis. It crosses the y-axis at 0, 20. Now let's go look for the vertex. The vertex is the place where this parabola turns. And so it is the bottom-most point. And actually, if we do click this parabola, I'm just going to click off. If I click on the red curve, you can see there's a point down there. If I click that point, that is my vertex, -3, 2. That is the place where my parabola turns. So here we're sort of riding the roller coaster down, 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 down. We hit -3, 2, and we start curving up. And much like a line, these things go on forever. In this case, it's going to go on forever up in both directions. It will stop here in terms of going down, but it will go up forever in both directions. Yeah, and that's our quadratic function for 2x squared plus 12x plus 20. So let's go ahead and put our function in here, this next function. We'll just go to number 3 since it's right here. -2x squared minus 8x minus 11. Put that into Desmos now. So you should have put that into the calculator. As you can see, this parabola is sort of flipped over. The difference between our original quadratic equation and our second one is the sign in front of the x squared term. So this 2x squared was positive, and when it was positive, you can see our parabola, we would say, opened upward. And when we have a negative coefficient on our x squared term, our parabola is going to open down. And we'll talk more about that in our next lesson, but it's good to notice these things now. And so let's go find the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and the vertex. And unfortunately, I have chosen a couple problems here that have no x-intercept. This does not cross the x-axis, so we will have no x-intercept again. If I click my parabola, it will highlight the vertex and my y-intercept, so I can actually click both of those points at the same time, and I can see on my parabola crosses the y-axis at 0, -11. It has no x-intercept, and its vertex is right here, -2, -3. And again, this parabola is going to go on and on forever. It's going to go on and on forever, downward in both directions. This is as far as it goes up. We will talk more about that in the next lesson. So I think we could do one more together. Let's do one more together. I'm going to choose this one, number 2, since we have a different number in front, just to make this thing look a little different. So go ahead and graph that one now. So here we go. I've got one now that crosses the x-axis. So you can see I'm going to click off of my parabola, and now I'm going to click it. And you can see it highlights the 4 important points. Now we have 4 important points because it's crossing the x-axis twice. And so we can, let's find the y-intercept first, 0, -2. And then let's go pick off the vertex. These are things we've talked about in the last 2 problems. There's the vertex, the place where it turns, 1, 1. And now let's talk about the x-intercepts, since we have not talked about them yet. We can unclick these points if we don't want to have too many coordinates shown. And I'm going to click this first x-intercept, and it's 0.4230. And we can just copy that decimal down. And then we're going to have a second x-intercept, 1.5770. And we want to make sure that we copy both of them down because it crosses the x-axis twice. And so that's all we're looking for today, is looking for the important points that we can find when we graph a quadratic function. Let's talk quickly one more time about this function notation. F with the x in parentheses is read f of x. It's not f times x, it's f of x. All this is showing is that we can plug in x values here and then see what it turns into. Again, this is a function. When the number in front with the x squared is positive, it opens up. When it's negative, it opens down. And the vertex is the place where the curve turns. That's our vertex. The x-intercept is the place where it crosses the x-axis. Sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's none. The y-intercept is the place where it crosses the y-axis. So I have one you try here. There's actually going to be a couple questions about it, so make sure that you answer the questions and then press play or submit them, and I will put the answers up here. So here we have the vertex, the two x-intercepts, and the y-intercept. Hopefully you found all of them. If you missed one or more, please do make sure that you ask me for help so that we can figure out where you missed one or more of those. As always, I have some practice problems. Please make sure that you answer the questions associated with these practice problems. Take your time on these. If you need help, always ask, and good luck.